So wonderful to see all of you today. To my panel members, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for switching on your webcam. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules and being with us today. To the attendees, good evening. Good to see so many of you for the third time in a row. We did our first webinar 2 weeks ago, which was The View from India, where I had 6 school counselors join me to present their perspective and the challenges that they are facing in their school with students and parents. That then prompted the second webinar last week, which was The View from the US, where I had about 7 college admission heads joining me in responding to those challenges. And today we have a very different panel. We have the view from Indian higher education. So we have representatives of prominent 21st century Indian colleges with us. Thank you everybody for being here. And as counselors, we are seeing a new conversation that is happening. It used to be a minority conversation for me at this time of the year, where a kid who was typically going abroad, let's say, and then suddenly in April, March, May period decided, oh, I think I also want to apply to college in India. And, perhaps the family had a change of mind, or the student was not ready. And at that point, we would frantically begin looking at options in India and say, oh, what's a good fit college for you? And what are the required application tick lists? Today, what we are seeing is, I think, an increased number of our students who were primarily thinking of heading abroad, be it US, Canada, UK, Europe, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, and are suddenly now switched on to the idea of perhaps I may not be able to do this, perhaps I'm not ready to do it, perhaps my parents don't want me to do this. And there is an absolute surge in interest in college admissions in India. So I'm sure everybody on the panel has been dealing with this. And of course, you are used to the Indian high school option number A for them, but you are all now going to interact increasingly from students who are of this, who are this new species. This is the primary focus of today's webinar, if you may. It's been interesting having those conversations, and perhaps for the wrong reasons, but it's definitely thrown all the colleges that are on the panel in the limelight at the moment. So I hope to inspire a wonderful conversation this evening with the panel members, and the counselors in the audience can take away some interesting messages on how we can help our students better and how we can help them find the right fit colleges for them and navigate the application process and ensure that they have a smoother transition to the institution of higher education that they are going to. So having said that, welcome everybody. Before I go ahead, a very quick announcement for a couple of housekeeping issues. Number one, that this discussion, I hope, will last something like 40 to 45 minutes. And at the end, we'll keep 20 minutes for discussion, for Q&A. So if the audience members, I can request you to hold on to your questions till the end when I take inquiries from the audience. That's number one. Number two is that Devesh and I are recording the webinar today, and this recording will be shared with everybody on the panel, as well as all the attendees and all the people who have registered with us. I know that not all the people who registered are able to attend this evening. We got some messages, and also sometimes we have parents who magically discover link to our webinars, and so we will be sending the videos to these parents as well. So that's the housekeeping I wanted to talk about. As I go ahead, I want to introduce the panel. We have a star-studded panel. We have 2 heads of institutions and 3 heads of admission. So good evening to Anindya Mitra from Western Woods International. So good to see you again. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Neeraj. Thanks for inviting me here.
It's my pleasure. Second, we have the founder and CEO of Indian School of Hospitality, Mr. Dilip Puri. Good evening, sir. How do you do?
I'm well, thank you, and thank you for having me over.
It's nice to see you. Third, we have the president of Shiv Nadar University with us. So it's with great pleasure I'm introducing Colonel Gopal Karunakaran. Good evening, sir. How are you doing?
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. We have Miss Hansa Sachdeva, who's the Director of Undergraduate Admissions and Financial Aid at Ahmedabad University. How do you do? Good evening. You'll just have to unmute, yeah.
Good evening, Neeraj, and looking forward to this interaction today. Thank you for having me here.
Yep, thank you for joining us. Next, we have Ms. Kanchi Khanna, who is the Director of Outreach at Kriya University. Good evening, Kanchi. How are you doing?
Good evening, Neeraj, and so happy to be here, be a part of this panel.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Raj Gopal CV, who is the Head of Admission at Azim Premji University. Good evening, Mr. Raj Gopal.
Good evening. Hello, Neeraj. How are you?
All well, sir. Good to have you, and I'm excited about the discussion today.
Absolutely. Looking forward.
Wonderful. So, first question is, how are things? I hope everything is okay on campus. And, Kanchi, how are things on the campus? Is everything okay? How are the students? How are you delivering the education to your current batch?
So, students are not on campus. Students are all home. Some faculty members are on campus. The campus is not shut down completely, of course, for that reason. But all learning is happening online. Students, smaller groups in larger classes. So it's continuing the way it was supposed to be. We don't want to give a gap to the learning, in these difficult times.
Yes. Yeah. Colonel Gopal, sir, how are things at Shiv Nadar? Anything new? Any new thoughts on how we are going to do this online education for our students?
So interestingly, we seem to be one of the campuses with 550 bodies inside the campus. We have a 300-acre campus, and for some reason at that point of time, we didn't take this immediate decision. Partially because a lot of students, especially from rural areas, the ones on scholarship obviously couldn't continue their education. Then we have a lot of students from South, and then we have a lot of PhD students who need to use the research facilities. So for all these reasons, we had at that point of time about 300 students, and then it's still down to about 220. And we've continued with, and of course, 200 plus faculty and about 100 people support staff. So everybody lives inside, and we've kept COVID away for about 2 months now, nearly. And now, interestingly, when the government opened up and said you could travel and give us the list of students, etc., students don't seem to want to go back. So we have to look after them till it gets a little better. But we made a very quick transition into online education, partially obviously forced on us, but also because we had made some sort of preparations from a technology perspective, and there needed to be very quick adoption. And while we were able to therefore finish the semester, except for some exams which can't be done from a distance mode, projects, etc. But I think what we need now to do is to be prepared even better for maybe some part of the first semester, though the government has said August, existing students can be back, and September, new students should come in, but we are not really that sure whether that's going to happen. But I suppose as a university, we have to be prepared to take these 2,000 plus students in a way that some part of it could well be online and hopefully better than even what we delivered earlier. So that's where we stand as of now at SMU.
Yeah, this thing has been imposed on us, so all of us are learning how to do this better. And I suppose for subjects where you can teach online, we can try to teach online. But then there are things like film and design and those. I wonder how Whistling Woods is teaching those things online. So, Anindya, any comments on those?
I saw their website. It looks very interesting, very possible.
Yeah, so being in the film industry, trying to train people to join the film industry, we are always in the news, you see. So, yes, it is very difficult days for all of us. But yes, we have made a equally smooth transition into that online education space. Yes, as Neeraj was rightly saying, that some of the practical aspects of most of the programs that are offered on Whistling Woods cannot be done online, or maybe in a modified manner it is being done. But largely we have been able to complete the theory components of the current semester online. And there was luckily since we closed on March 16th or so, we had completed about 60-70% of the practical components as well by then. So so far so good for the existing students. And as far as the semester exams and how they are going to happen, our management as well as the university that we are associated with, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, we are contemplating on how to do the grading of the practical units, which I think we will come out with very soon. And yes, about the new batches which we want to start in 2020, we are absolutely in the same boat that all the others are, like August for the continuing students, and September is the guideline which UGC has given for the new students. But we are still, we are in Mumbai. So, Mumbai is famous for everything. Even in this COVID days, we somehow, managed to top the charts. So, yeah, so it's some kind of a thought which needs to go in. We will be probably able to do some kind of a concrete decision by the end of this month. And that's how we plan to move ahead.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. Mr. Puri, how does one teach hospitality online? Yes, we all need to learn better online etiquettes, I suppose, but any comments on how you teach hospitality online?
Well, actually, to be honest, let me just say that our undergraduate courses are not hospitality in the sense you might understand it. So it's not hotel management. So we're not teaching just the practical subjects, and maybe I can talk about that a little later. But I just wanted to make an early comment that for very selfishly, if you like, but I'm probably having the most fun time I've had in a long time. And I'll tell you why. That the ability to be a part of this whole experience, which just confronted all of us, and particularly as I heard the other panelists say, transitioning from classroom teaching to online learning and doing it almost seamlessly. I think that's something which whoever has been able to do it should really give themselves a pat on the back, because I think this situation has almost forced us to do it. And in forcing us to do it, the great outcome to me is that it's also going to force a change of habit in students in the way they consume online learning. So when one of our panelists just talked about how are we going to blend learning, and we're going to take a different approach to it at ISH, where from a semester perspective, admissions perspective, so indeed, if the government's announced 1st August and 1st September, our intention is to start our new semesters for our existing students now. We've just finished the curriculum for finished now on, or is finishing on 5th of May tomorrow. And very reluctantly, the students are taking 2 weeks off. They don't want to, surprisingly, nor do this August 1st, September 1st, these are still moving goalposts. And so that's my perspective on how we're looking at least this very, very early stages of what will happen once the lockdown's eased up.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, and it's great to see such a forthcoming attitude. Definitely students are going to benefit on your campus from this. Ms. Sachdeva, admissions open at Ahmedabad University. Big question on counselors' mind is, when will they shut and how will they work? Will they be any different from before? Are you going to accept more students? What will happen if a student says that they want to defer? How will Ahmedabad University handle things like that?
So I think a couple of quick points here. The first is admissions are open, classes are on, exams have been conducted. And for us, this has been, of course, a period of immense learning. But as Dilip mentioned, also a period in which perhaps we have transformed significantly. So sometimes we think that, in a relatively short period of time, the university has changed the equivalent of many years. So in a few weeks, I think we've lived out many years. For us at admissions, we receive students from many state boards, and therefore typically we do not close admissions in May. They continue. However, we're taking decisions pretty much as we speak to ensure that the kind of issues students are facing today are at the center of all that we do. So there have been policy decisions to extend timelines for applying. There have been policy decisions to allow students even to enter class without their class 12 grades in case for some reason they are held up beyond a particular point. So overall, I think admissions for us have been online for many years now, actually for 3 or 4 years. That process continues unabated. While the campus is closed, the entire university continues to operate on work from home. And we're available remotely to try and facilitate everything that students will need in this very difficult period. Because the fact is, this batch, having had their exams interrupted, having had their results delayed, will go through their own period of stress, and we'd like to mitigate that to the maximum extent possible.
Yeah, very, very mature perspective there. One of the fears that counselors have and that parents are imposing on a lot of us is, will there be enough seats, because there is going to be greater demand at colleges in India. So will colleges respond to that by increasing the number of incoming students?
Is that
yeah,
question?
Sure. That's a question, because that's a question that we have received from many of the counselors who are in audience today.
So we have immediately taken a call that we will increase intake by approximately 20% in this year. And that's because I think, we have been building the infrastructure of Ahmedabad University of the last 10 years. And we have, both in terms of faculty and physical infrastructure, the ability to accommodate this number of students. So this number has been arrived at keeping in mind norms of social distancing, ensuring that classes actually are conducted in a manner which keeps students safe. So just to give you an example, we may be thinking of parallelly running classes in digital mode and in physical mode. So perhaps a smaller group attends in physical mode while the other group does a parallel session digitally, and then the two are reversed. So many decisions are happening, I think, under the hood, behind the screens for all educational establishments. This has been a period in which we've taken huge strides in terms of what we can actually do to find solutions at this point.
Yeah. Mr. Rajgopal, how are things at Azim Premji University and admissions for this fall?
I don't want to be repeating what my other colleagues have said. So I think the challenge, pretty much the same. The idea is to see that the batch that is graduating graduates, because there's jobs waiting for them. They have to take decision on their future academic career paths. So that was the first priority, to go online and see that the classes are over. The challenge, right? I think the challenge for us has been for the field internship or the field practice element that the students had to do. So if you take our MA development program, they were supposed to spend 8 weeks in the month of May, June, interacting with the community. So we are trying to redesign that field internship part of it, how they can do it from their present place of stay. So it's been, as others said, Hansa and others said, we're trying to re-evolve as we move on. There's no package solution as such, what each university should be do. While it's easy to go online, when we went online, we had challenges. We realized a lot of our students were in places with no good internet connectivity. So how do we really support them with that infrastructure they need to connect to classes? Students who have to be live on video, we may think it's quite normal, but some were not really okay to be live on. They don't want their home site to be exposed. So we went through a little bit of challenges when we started. It took, especially even for faculty members, they had to assume there's a large audience sitting. They're basically performers in a classroom where they have to deliver, they could quickly see the reaction of a student. So all those elements were missing initially, but we learned the hard way. That seemed to be the way to go going.
Yeah, I think he's frozen there. So I think that exemplifies probably that there is heterogeneous digital infrastructure in our country, right? We can say that, yes, we are going to go online and teach them, but at the receiving end, at the student end, there is so much variation in the quality of the internet. So how are things at Shiv Nadar in terms of admissions and, will you be increasing the number of students? Is that possible for you?
Right. So in terms of student numbers, Shiv Nadar right from inception has been relatively small in terms of the intake. We take about 500 students a year. This year, we are taking about 650 students who will physically live on campus because it's a 100% residential campus. We have increased seats both in the School of Engineering, primarily computer science, as well as in the School of Management. So that's where the extra sort of seats will come in. We also have to cater for the fact that we have to have hostel accommodation for students. Everybody has to live on campus. But yes, there is conversations around online education and whether that can be extended to students who are keen to pursue that. But there's no dramatic increase in numbers. We can keep our quality high and keep the numbers small, but we expect to, get the quality admissions that should happen this year. Mm-hmm. But we've also changed the admission process considerably. We are definitely not waiting for CBSE 12th class or state board 12th class exam. So in every one of our schools, that's no more a criteria for admissions.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Ms. Khanna, what about at Kriya? Kriya is so fast and upcoming, everyone's so excited about it. So how are you going to deal with this enhanced number of inquiries?
So Neeraj, whether it is classroom learning or whether it is the admissions process, ours was a very high contact kind of a process, right? For both, for learning and for admissions. We used to have a case study, we used to have a field trip in our admissions process. So very quickly we moved that online, also keeping in mind that the student experience is very important, especially in liberal learning kind of universities. It's very important to have the one-on-one and every student learns at their own pace, and keeping that in mind, we did move it online, but we were very conscious that this has to be very high quality, so that the ultimate student experience is not compromised, right? And in our admissions process, we're looking at curiosity, we're looking at collaboration. So it was a challenge to sort of take all that online, to put a case study and still be able to evaluate these values that are that we hold very close to our hearts. So yeah, it did take some thinking to do, but I think we've done it beautifully. In fact, a large element of the students coming together for the case study was them getting to know each other. They would go out on a field trip together, so they would become very familiar with each other. So we realized that whatever we do, even if we put the case study online, we're somewhere losing that, interaction, student-student interaction. So we, in fact, now have a session a day prior to the admissions process where we just put them in groups of 5 to 6 and we let them talk to each other. This is, an informal setting where they become comfortable with each other, because the next day they have to engage in a case study together. So if they don't know each other, they might not be able to do it. So we've really gone that extra mile to make sure that we've retained all those elements that we so valued in the physical, space. I'm not saying it's 100%, it's 100% transition, but I think we're on our way to build in that, more and more the backbone with IT and technology to be able to give that complete user experience to the students, even in their classroom learnings.
That's
and yes,
fantastic.
We've increased seats. Sorry, we've increased about 20% of the seats, to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you. And that's such an exciting experience for a student to go through, even whether they end up at Kriya or not, that journey itself, like we see in the Next Genius Scholarship Program as well, the experience of participating in the program itself is so enriching for so many of the students. So, Mr. Puri, how's the admission model at ISH evolving? Any different comments from the rest of the panel?
So again, like Kanchi had mentioned, our admissions process was primarily online in any case, except for having a visit to the campus or doing a selection day. But amongst the things which we were again seamlessly able to transition, and thanks to technology. So on our websites or any of our links, you will find a pretty amazing virtual tour available. So that gives a student and a parent a really good perspective of the campus without physically being there, the next best thing you could do. Within the admissions process, either which way, our admissions process was never based on an entrance exam and was never based on your board results. The board results were one component of an overall perspective. And in that, I'd like to actually highlight the fact, both to counselors and to my fellow panelists, that this situation we're in perhaps again gives us yet another transformational opportunity in moving away from thinking that the best students are those who get 99 and 98. It's bringing in more behavioral aspects into the interview process to admit a student. I think this situation is really teaching us all that. And I hope it goes on to become a true mindset where when you're admitting students, as you say, why do you do case studies in groups? Or why do you do group discussions otherwise? It's to understand the behavioral aspects of the students. And for too long, that's had a very small component within generally how universities take in students. It's always on the basis of an entrance exam. So I think if that changes, or if that mindset changes, it's a huge positive we can all take out of this. But having technology to provide you with virtual tours, the ability for our admissions counselors to actually spend more one-on-one time with students, because what's happening in today's time is that students have the time. I always love to say in today's time, are we running with time or are we running against time? While locked down, we're still running with time. We have time to do the things which we want to institutionalize for the future. And whatever we're doing today in terms of having to deal with converting many things to online, my sense is the successful enterprises of the future will be those who institutionalize this always. And it's not just that we had to do it during COVID, and now we can get back to how we used to do things. There have to be some transformational changes, and education as a sector in India is so ripe and ready for those changes. So when you today hear that the government is thinking of allowing universities to run full-time degree programs online, I think that's been forced out of these circumstances, but it's the best thing you could do. And so it should encourage more and more higher education institutions to be so focused on how you can create digital content and create blended learning. When you ask the question about, will you take more students or not? Think of it from a real estate perspective, right? Today, when social distancing norms come in, if you have the ability to blend your undergrad programs in our case, or even postgrad programs, and you through your experience of this time have been able to figure out that I can provide 40, 50, 60% of my learning to a full-time undergrad very easily through online means, which means you tell the student, you come to college 3 days a week, and you can learn from home 3 days a week, full-time in college. And the other 3 days when they're not, that's where you're only got half the class, so you're able to manage the social distancing norms. So many of these things need to be understood, recognized by us as educators today in preparing these students who are going to join the undergraduate space in the next few months, to be able to say, we're not coming into something which is just being created makeshift and things are going to go back. They should be coming in to an environment that say, wow, this is the new normal of how education is going to be. And I think that's where today, if I look at the institutions represented on this panel and many others, I made a comment the other day as well that we always talk in India about there was incredible India, there was make in India. I really think it's time to create a whole slogan for education which says study in India. Because students in any case this year don't have choices. And there are many, many ways in which you can do it. So a lot of people asked us, for example, why do you have international collaborations in our academics? So we are an EHL, Ecole de Sang certified school. We're a Singapore Sunrise Chefs Academy certified school. How are they helping us today? Because they've allowed us to create curriculums which are almost universal or global in nature. Can that allow institutions like ours to become almost fostering schools for those students who are planning to go abroad this year, for example, but are not going to be able to because of travel restrictions, visa restrictions, when things will ease down? Our curriculums are mature enough that the credits can be granted by universities abroad when the student can move next year after finishing 1 year here. I think those kind of things have to be thought of by Indian institutions in order for us to truly institutionalize that, we have global quality education in India. And either which way, I've always been a firm believer that spending money on undergrad education abroad is just such a waste of money.
Well, it's very refreshing to hear your thoughts. I don't know if I agree with all of it, and definitely education is one of those things that needs a shock treatment so many times for it to change. We are living through one such moment right now, but I think the emphasis on holistic assessment is very critical. We never see that, right? That topper at school, topper at college, and some kind of topper in life. So that correlation definitely does not exist. It's always been harder to assess the non-quantitative side of people, but I think as institutions the world over are doing a much better job at assessing people holistically, and it's very refreshing, in the like I've been working with students for the last 19 years, and in the last sort of 10 years, I would say it's been very refreshing to witness that change in India, and I think definitely the paradigm shift is happening. And I know that this event is going to catalyze that paradigm shift. So as educators, I think all of us understand this very well. It's harder to explain it to parents who are still stuck in that sort of pre-three idiots mode, I suppose, and still focusing only on the grades, right? So I brought up a movie, so I have to go to Anindya Mitra now. And how are things at Whistling Wood? How is the admission model changing? Or is it changing at Whistling Wood?
So what we have done is we have an elaborate entrance exam process, which probably is necessary because all our undergraduate degree programs are catering to the creative fields. If there is one thread which connects all the undergraduate programs that are offered at Whistling Woods, it's creativity, and we really cannot admit a student on the basis of the 12th scores because these are courses where our programs need a specific kind of a skill which has to be there in the student. So we are quite fortunate that we could develop our own proprietary software for entrance exams. I was in fact heading that team, and we did that in 15 days flat. So we now have a fully integrated entrance exam software, a platform. So we are even doing the creative aptitude tests and the general aptitude tests on that platform, which was a challenge earlier because, in certain places the student needs to sketch something or student needs to, exhibit something. So, but still we have managed that, they do it on a piece of paper, then take a picture and upload it on the software so that the faculty can see it and then grade it. So we have been able to figure that out. So our entrance exam process has not changed. In fact, in the first week of April, we had about 750 odd students from across the country who took our entrance exams with what we call as the April round of entrance exams. And we could conduct that online successfully. And in fact, our admission process is on. So we have not changed much as far as the admission process is concerned. Only thing that has changed slightly is the cutoffs. We have slightly lowered the cutoffs. Generally, what we have is a particular X on 100 is the cutoff. What we have done is we have put it X -5, so that because this was online, because the entrance process was online, and there could be the things like maybe bandwidth issues or maybe just the stress of a student to perform, and that could have probably compromised the quality which would have been otherwise if the student would have come on campus. So we have done that much adjustment. And I think going by the outcome of it and the results, I think we are doing fine. And there is a lot of increasing interest in the fields that we offer. Just like Neeraj was saying that in the last 10 years, there has been quite a change in the outlook of parents as well. I remember in my earlier days with Whistling Woods, which was about 7-8 years back, it was a student-driven kind of application that student would go and tell to parents that I want to do this program, and the parents would pull them towards the traditional fields like medicine and engineering. But nowadays, I find parents themselves searching us and talking to us that, my child has shown creative instincts right from the school days, and he has been playing with the cameras, and so probably this is what is suited for him. So, and are offering undergraduate degree programs recognized by UGC and being awarded by one of the premier institutions like Tata Institute of Social Sciences help the matters, because probably we are the first in India to offer a 3-year degree program in acting. It's a Bachelor of Arts in Acting. So these things, what we did at our end is helping us today. As of now, I don't see much change that we had to do apart from shifting the entire thing digitally, from the physical campus to the digital, as far as the entrance process is concerned. So that's where we are.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very interesting, and I think definitely adds on to what Mr. Puri was saying earlier, about holistic admission. Do the numbers also go up at Whistling Woods then?
I don't think the numbers would go up, because ours is a very equipment heavy kind of courses where we have limited number of seats which we can accommodate. These are like cameras and studios which cannot be increased overnight, because there's a lot of things which go into developing these things. But having said that, since we have lowered the cutoffs, probably we are looking at about 5 or 10% more admissions this year. But that is still to be seen once we close our admissions somewhere around August.
Okay. Well, I just had to ask. It's because the number of counselors that have inquired about this in the audience. So I had to address all of you for it. Let me shift gears and talk about what fall 2020 is going to look like at your institutions. And I know this is not an easy question to answer because of how fluid the current situation is, but at least today on May 4th, what is the current thinking on the structure and the shape of fall 2020? So at Kriya University, let's say, what is it going to look like? You're muted, Kanchi.
So I think all universities are making contingency plans on many scenarios, right? We could open in September, we we might have to take the first semester or trimester online and then open later, or a lot of options in between, right? But I think what we are looking at and what seems to be a good way to go about it is to break up larger modules into smaller modules, right? So that you have more flexibility in quickly shifting from one to the other. That's one. And also looking at redesigning the courses, even if it's in terms of scheduling, right? So what comes before, or we can make the contact programs later, or something like that, so that, in many ways it leaves us very nimble and very flexible to be able to adapt quickly, because we don't know. I mean, there's no reliable information which says, yes, we will be able to definitely function after this. So there may be, we may get back students on campus and 3 months later, we may again have to lock down, right? So how are we thinking about our curriculum in ways that we can, very quickly adapt and change and switch? But like I said, for us, a very important element is continuing to keep the student experience there, because a liberal arts program is very one-on-one, it's very mentorship driven, right? So we don't want to lose those. In fact, faculty have been kind enough to offer beyond office hours. They've, their availability for students to get in touch with them, for discussions, because students are very anxious too at this point in time, right? They want to know what project, what happened to the internships, and like you were mentioning, so that internships we're looking for internships which are online, right? Because this was a 3-month summer. They've just wrapped up their trimester. What do they do? How do they do those internships? So we are reaching out to, companies and organizations where students are going to go. Mostly our students were going to do a social impact internship in this summer. And so we're reaching out to them to see if these can be in some way online projects. So yeah, it's a difficult to predict time, but we have to do whatever we can.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts. And at Azim Premji University, what is the current thinking on the fall semester, fall term?
Because for the new semester, to be frank, so each institution will have a particular objective and a rationale for the program they are offering, right? So for the programs that we are offering, it'd be very hard for me to say that we will think as if nothing has happened and everything can go online. No, that's not going to happen. Number one, we'll wait for directives from the government as to when can face-to-face interaction start. So if they say we're able to start the semester only in September, that means that we're going to move the end date. That's what we're looking at, number one.
Yeah.
But then, we have to do something meaningful, engage with the students in the month of July and August. So the current thinking is about that. The students who have already accepted our offers, how do you stay connected with them? What is that? They're under, at one end they think that the exams are not over. There's a long gap. Whatever we say, this online program offering has been there for a while, right? What we call the MOOCs. But still there is some value in parents and students. They see that coming to a university, being there on the campus, we can't take away that. So my quick answer is, we are seriously looking at extending the last date of the semester. That's the number one thing that we're doing. And we're not really thinking of anything else at this point of time. This is this is very specifically for the postgraduate programs, what I said now. For undergrad programs, we haven't taken a decision yet. We have one more round of admissions to happen. So we'll take a call on undergrad program pretty soon.
Okay, fair enough. And both what Ms. Khanna and you are saying, I have heard colleges outside India say the same thing as well. So, I mean, we're all in the same boat, and different thinking styles are persisting. Push it forward is one strategy, modularize it is another strategy. Is Shivnatha doing anything different from what we have heard so far? So you're just muted, let me remind you.
So I'll sort of echo similar to what Kanchi and Rajgopal said about their respective universities. Some similar thoughts, but I suppose for us to look at it, all of us will be looking at, I'm guessing, 1, student safety, 2, curriculum, 3rd, student experience. Student experience outside the classroom. How are we going to match, substitute these sort of needs? I think that's what the future is going to be. The next 2 months is about thinking about that. There are all sorts of predictions. September is going to be worse than April and things like that. So we don't know what's going to happen in terms of contracting, for example, semesters. Then that's one part of it. But for us as a residential campus, of course, safety is a huge issue because everybody lives here. So, we have to look at accommodation, the dining facilities. But we have very large classrooms, so just keeping them spread out will do for social distance within the classroom. But then there is also the larger issue of why, like all of you have been saying, why go to a university if you can't play sport and take part in societies and clubs and spend time with each other? And I think those are also areas that we need to be looking at very closely, and we have to go to, design that. But I think we'll all be playing it by the year a little bit. So there'll be some elements of planning, some elements of seeing what the next month looks like, and then we will go into the sort of implementation mode. But I think the planning needs to continuously go.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Can I just give a contrarian view, if I might?
Sure, please go ahead.
Keep options here. I think, again, what we are experiencing today is unexperienced by anyone before. And let's keep the perspective that it's also been experienced by our students. Whichever ones of them are consuming online learning, like in our case, to talk about societies and groups, I find it so pleasantly refreshing that our students take the initiative themselves to plan online social activities. So if there's an events committee in the college, they're planning events online right now. If there is a debating society in our college, they're planning a debate as we speak. When we think about bringing in guest speakers, there's a committee which does that, which includes students. So them being involved, imagine the richness of learning and experience they are going through in this time. And I think it's important for us to therefore see that these students, especially our current students who are experiencing this, and when they come back, their outlook would have changed too. And their perspective towards, let's try new things, let's do different things. We have certain, we might have to increase semesters. I think it's all going to be bring it on. I think that's going to be a good mindset change in current students studying. In our case, when you look at this, when you ask about fall 2020, if in an ideal world, if what the government says happens, and by August 1st, you get your old students, and by 1st September, new students falls well. In our case, as I said earlier, because we're starting the semesters for our existing students now in May itself, by the time they come to college, they would have almost been close to completing the semester. It would give us a lot more time to focus on the new students coming in. So I think, yes, the next 2 months are going to be evolving, but we've got to keep so close to both our current students and our new students. So for our new students, for example, my admissions director came up with a bright idea, and she said, look, I want our students who registered with us, who are joining us, to be attending any guest lecture, external speaker session, which we're doing through Zoom classes for our current students. So we encourage new joining students and their parents to observe how we are able to deliver online learning to students. It excites them even more. We're helping already them also to build the mindset that this may be the way you may have to start your undergrad education, maybe for a couple of months or more. I think those are the things we should be thinking about.
Yeah, you reminded me of something a student said to me earlier in the day. He said, the classroom, that's the teacher's turf. But online and digital, that's my turf. I'm a pro at that. I know how to handle that. So I think somewhere, the tables are going to turn. And I think more than us teaching our students, we are all going to learn a thing or two about, how to manage ourselves and conduct ourselves in the digital environment.
Just an interesting aside that let's try two things: learning basketball and falling in love online. So that's part of student experience. Just remember that,
Yeah,
so there's something about the social bonding of going to a university, making friendships, and that's the sort of stuff which we should continue to think about. That's part of being 17 and 18 and 20 and 21.
I think we might be able to do
all the classes will happen.
I said, I think we might be able to do the falling in love bit online, because that's quite popular as it is. But playing basketball, I'm not sure. We'll have to go that.
If I may come in with a comment here.
Yeah, sure.
The fact is that there will be a vacuum in terms of education for all these youngsters as of now. I believe that as a university, even if we are not able to deliver the 100% experience right now, it's important for us to step forward and start filling that vacuum. So in my mind, a prolonged period when students are actually home without knowing what lies ahead, and keeping in mind that this may extend for a very long time, it's very important for us to step forward. So in a sense, I think I'm as contrarian as Dilip, because I believe that we have to step forward at this point, accepting that there is going to be a strong need to focus on safety, working hard at it, and yet trying to, I think, also create a different kind of education. So, one of the thoughts at the university right now is that we are labeling much of what will be by what has already been. And that may not happen. So is blended going to be enough? Probably not. Is just the word a digital classroom enough? Probably not. Can we as a university step forward to really transform education in ways that perhaps, have not been thought of yet as we go forward? So that classroom, taking it online, really not an issue. I mean, we conduct personal interactions as part of our admissions process, and we have been able to do that. Continue in that way. But that's not the challenge. The point is, can we make it as engaging as, many digital experiences are today, where a student can actually, I don't know, look at the respiratory system and touch it so that it revolves, be able to perhaps engage with it differently. I also want to just add one more line. I think what Dilip said is super important. Universities have to equip students for life, and life today is looking unbelievably complex. We must engage with them to try and prepare them for this kind of a future. So I think that's just, concurring broadly with the contrarian views over there that I wanted to do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. And I think as educators in the audience, a lot of the counselors would agree with the thoughts being put out there on the table. It's, again, the challenge for all of us on this side of the table is convincing and explaining all of this to parents, who tend to have more of a rigid outlook and have more fears around, is my child going to be successful in life? Will they get into college X and will they get grades Y? And I mean, the things I'm hearing, I'm so incredibly happy to hear, because as educators, we are on that wavelength very much. So let me take a very short break here. Thank you so much for all your insights. It is not a commercial break. I don't have any sponsors or advertisers. I am definitely looking for them though, always. But I'm going to conduct a short poll of our audience. And this is an insight that I think is going to be very useful for our panel members. So here goes. The question is, what % of your students are dropping their plans of study abroad and considering studying in India for undergraduate studies, right? So this is a question for the people in the audience. The answers are coming through. We'll give it about a minute or so. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the result. Okay, last 10 seconds. Great, I'm going to close it now. So if anybody else wants to answer, now is your chance. All right, closing it now. Thank you. And I am going to share the results. So I hope all of you can see the results on your screen. If somebody could give me a thumbs up. Yes, can you see it? Okay, so, the numbers are 30 to 50% is it's the highest, right? So we can see it's across the spectrum. 1 out of 5 counselors is saying that more than 50% of the students who were thinking of going abroad are also now considering study in India. So I think this just sort of quantifies the idea that I put out there at the beginning of the webinar today. And I just wanted all of you to have this. I've taken a screenshot and I think we will share it with you at the end of the webinar. So I know that, it's 7:27 now, and I did have other questions for you, but I think we'll have to take a stop there today. So any final words from all of you for the counselors, any words of wisdom, any advice that they can share with their families? Yeah, Kanchi, go ahead.
So Neeraj, I know that the counselors would want us to give out firm dates saying, or firm decisions saying we've delayed or we're not delaying or we are continuing. But from the university's perspective, to take a call very early, maybe close to delay the program, would be sort of closing ourselves to any sliver of chance that, things may come back to normal. And if we wait for too long, then, everyone will be scrambling to sort of get everything in place, because, getting even the modules online requires a lot of work, right? So we have to plan for both scenarios, right? Whether we close it, whether they come back, or whether it's online or offline. So I think to be able to give answers today may not be possible. That's why it's important that we all play it by the ear. But we want to assure the counselors that admissions are open, we are available, learning will happen in whichever way it does. So that would be my final, last comment to the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Puri. Yes.
I was just going through the some of the questions which were popping up on the Q&A, Neeraj, and I'll just address two of them very quickly. First is somebody asked about, international collaborations and do they help? I mean, we would be a classic example where, because our curriculums were designed as per global curriculums because of our partnerships, the ability for students who are going abroad able to do a year here and then seek credits with their universities abroad, which we're already working with about 14 colleges so far, and we're expanding those to offer our curriculums for the first year so that students don't waste any time at all. So I think that's something which admission counselors want to keep in mind. In terms of the timings and all of that, I think the reality is most universities are going to be very flexible in these situations. So you shouldn't either rush or panic your students, but you should encourage them to start talking. Because today they have the time. They have the time and the ability to research, not just them, their parents can be helping them do that because they're all at home doing, not much else. And I think it's important, again, to put your mind to seeing what's out there in India. What other options can we have? Should we start talking to some people? You just need to talk. You're not necessarily going and seeking admission, but you're getting a perspective and what Indian universities can offer as a plan B. Most counselors will tell you that parents pretty much already have a plan B. They are already beginning to look at Indian universities. I think that should be encouraged in a holistic way so that truly we can put out many of us there who are actually genuinely trying to be global in the way we're able to deliver education.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And thank you for coming on the panel and saying that today. Anybody else? Any closing messages from my panel members?
Okay, so, for counselors, I would say that, what I see over the last couple of months, especially after this, is that obviously for a particular segment of society, looking at an undergrad option, for going abroad, for example, was part of what a lot of our families did, right? But I think it was Dilip who said that, it doesn't sort of make sense. So you do have an opportunity here to look at sort of Indian universities, where I think the student experience, even in the nature of the curriculum, a lot of the best practices of American universities are available at a fraction of the cost, right? So this is an opportunity to select, if you were to advise students or parents now, obviously I would always say, look at the program that the child deeply wants to do, and that's one part. But I think the new play here is going to be safety and distance from home, interestingly. So I think North Indian located people will look at things which are closer, and those who are closer to South will look at what is closer. The other interesting part is, both my children went to St. Stephen's College and did what Dilip did. I forced them to say, sorry, no undergrad abroad, find your own feet, work a little bit, and then find your own universities abroad. But the public university where you're going every day and coming back, there is a safety issue now already. You're not even sure whether that's the best thing. It used to be great student life. At 17 to 20, you want to travel in a public transport, decide whether to go to class or not. But now you're in that uncertain phase. So I think those are, look at the program, look at proximity, look at what suits you, and then research what you really want to do. But I would say that some of our Indian private universities now are offering you world-class education. So do look closely at that.
Thank you for that, sir. Any closing messages from Ms. Sachdeva, Mr. Mitra?
Yeah, Neeraj, I was just looking at one of the questions which came up in the Q&A. At this situation of COVID-19, I feel students will step down to move abroad. But do you think we will be able to give them a global platform to make them fit for the global map? So I would like to answer this question on behalf of my institution, Whistling Woods International. We have anyways been having students from abroad who come to study with us since a long time. And people who pass out from us have also gone abroad and worked in Hollywood and worked in international film fraternities. So this question probably in our zone, in the zone from where I come from, probably will not make much of a difference because we are anyways a full-time member of the Select, which is a world body of top film schools. And in fact, we hosted the World Select Congress in 2018. So we were rated in the top 10 film schools in the world by Hollywood Reporter for 3 consecutive years. So, just like one of the other panel members was saying that, yes, there is world-class quality education available in India. You can look at us, which is being rated as the top 10 in the world. So, and I think likewise in other fields also, there are options which are up there in the global standards. So, and any which ways, there are so many global CEOs, who are Indian bred and Indian educated, who are now heading global companies. So I don't think that there should be a problem in Indian educated students being able to, not being able to compete. They will, and I'm sure Indian universities are going to be matching the standards.
Thank you. Any closing messages, Ms. Sachdeva, Mr. Rajgopal?
Neeraj, I thought you wanted to talk about, or you should want to talk about scholarships and financial aid.
Yes, I was going to come to that when I talk about questions. I just wanted a sort of closing messages from anybody else.
I'll give you just a view on that. Much like students going abroad, seeking financial aid, have got financial aid. Today, I think the opportunity again for all of us is to really use this filter. When you talk about the debate of merit versus means, it's probably the best time to be able to do that. If there's going to be a spurt in the requirement of admissions, not enough seats, all of those things, we think that might happen, then I think it's even more important for Indian institutions to start looking at, on the basis of which you provide financial aid, you would really balance the whole merit versus means requirements. My own sense is that Indian institutions should be, and this is not about students who are going abroad. Students who are going abroad probably don't need scholarships in India, because even if they're getting scholarships in India, the education there is going to be way more expensive. But there was a question on your Q&A about what will happen to Indian students who are not going abroad. Will they lose out because the foreign students will take their seats? I think this is a real opportunity for institutions to stand up to say that we would be even more prudent and in the way in which we are looking at granting financial aid or scholarships for this incoming batch.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other closing messages? And then I'm going to jump into the Q&A.
So just adding in, Neeraj, that, picking up from what you've been saying, and you've said this in different ways through the discussion, I think we mustn't forget the lessons of COVID. Here is a panel of universities, perhaps the finest in India, stepping forward and saying, actually, marks don't matter all that much. Students matter more. And we're doing this collectively. Can you imagine a panel which actually has all the leading institutions coming together in one place to make such a strong statement about how concerned they are in terms of just ensuring that education continues, learning continues? We should not forget the lessons of COVID too quickly. Much like the environment has benefited, perhaps education too will transform and emerge stronger through this process.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. So Rajgopal, any last messages for the audience?
I mean, probably I'm answering one of the questions that's out there. For all message, I keep telling this to parents: don't look at education only as a as a mean to, end up in a job. If you truly look at, it's about the learner's development in multiple dimensions, right? Of course, the cognitive skills that they develop, but it's also about development in social, emotional, and ethical dimensions also. So look at those aspects of education as well. That's my closing comments to counselors and parents out there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for being on the panel. A couple of questions I'm just going to take. One is simply about if we are going to do a fall semester online, can parents expect a lower tuition fees? Anybody who want to take that? This is always a question we get as counselors.
While we were at it, I was typing those answers.
Okay.
And I think every university may have separate answers to it, but I don't see that happening this year because the costs are not going to go down. It's like saying, will the professors' salaries go down?
Yeah.
I don't see that going down for a while. So
that's so the answer is no.
Right?
The answer is no across the board.
I did type all the answers actually.
Okay.
So Neeraj, for Kriya, we've actually already refunded the hostel fees for all students who went home. But tuition fees, like he said, yes, that's not going down. We will continue to charge that because we have to pay the faculty as well, right? But hostel fees we've refunded already.
All right. Great. Thank you. I can see that Colonel Gopal has answered many of the questions. Thank you, sir, for doing that. We have to be judicious with our time. Let me then close the session today by, voting in a very big thank you to all of you. I mean, like Ms. Sachdeva said, it's so great to be on this panel together as educators for educators. And I know that the video of this session is going to be circulated to other counselors. And subsequently, I hope this message of sense that we have been putting forward is resonated by the counselors to the students' parents that we are working with. So thank you so much. I look forward to staying in touch with all of you. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the next generation of students. And good luck as we all embark on this very interesting educational journey that we are now embarking on. All right. Thank you and have a great evening.